Hello, everybody. Welcome to My Wife Joined a Cult. Strange name. Seems to be getting attention. I guess that was the reason for it. And it's evolving into something that's very spontaneous, in flow, and don't really know where it's going to go. And I wanted to have guests, and I have one today. Philip Maco. Hi, Philip.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you so much. I'm honored to join this journey with you.
Thank you. And it is a journey. Thanks for mentioning that. It is a journey that we're all on. Yours is a different journey. Everyone's is when you think about it. But then again, we're all one as well, because many people have been subjected to cults that don't even realize they are. And some people are in them and they don't even know that they're in them. This is part of what happens with cults, is the denial. Do you identify with that?
I do. And I think, we can expand that definition of cult to say anything that draws us in to do something that is potentially not in our best interest long term can be a cult. Can it influence us in terms of the decisions we make, the family we embrace, the family we separate from, financial decisions we make, all those types of things? Yeah, those fall into the area of expertise I have, which is in scams, cybersecurity threats, and cults. Because honestly, Craig, there are so many commonalities in this space that I was excited to have this conversation. And I think, when we can help people, we also can heal ourselves, right?
Yes.
Whether it's you directly or folks that you care about who have been affected by these types of scenarios that I assume we're going to talk about. If we can spread a message that says, hey, here's the warning signs, here's what to look out for, I think we're doing ourselves and the world a service.
I'm glad you said that, because can you bring your microphone a little closer to you? I'm glad you said that, because a lot of the some of the feedback I'll get is, there's like blowback. Just let it go. That's what people say. Just let it go. They're like tired of hearing it or whatever it is. Well, I don't agree with that, because I do think it's like quitting before the miracle. And I do believe there are miracles out there for people to have a transformation, to have a switch, to have a moment of clarity where they get out or someone helps them out, whatever it is. If we just stay back and allow it to happen, this is how cults exist, because people don't challenge them. They're just, let it go. You can lead a horse to water, can't make them drink. You can't force them. Well, if you lean enough, is what my theory is. You've leaned enough that someday something clicks in them where they go, this is correct. This is not good the direction I've taken.
Yeah, and I would share a story with you real quickly. Gentleman named, and I'm using a pseudonym, gentleman named CY, living in San Francisco. And he got a random message from someone on WhatsApp that claimed to be an associate of his from the past. And, he wasn't sure, he didn't remember her. Her name was Jessica, and he engaged with Jessica, right? And they started trading some conversations. And initially it was, let me get to know you, let me learn a little bit about what's going on in your life. It happened that CY's father was terminally ill and he was hospitalized. And over time and in building that relationship, Jessica, quote unquote, established that opportunity, that vulnerability. I'm going to fast forward to the end of the story. Within 3 months, CY lost $1.2 million, was financially devastated, lost everything, borrowed money from friends, mortgaged his house, which was completely paid off. And the method and the steps between that initial conversation and where it led and the punitive damage to a guy like CY is where the commonality exists between scams and cults. So that's why I was excited to join this conversation. And listen, I've listened to your origin story. I feel for you as a person. So many things you've been through in this evolution. I think it's cathartic to share that with others.
I agree.
But it's beyond that. It's about, hey, are these signs occurring in your life? And how can we help you recognize those things? So honored to be here with you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That is a big motivation. I always, my whole life, I like to help people and make people happy. Actually, I've been doing comedy for years. I just absolutely love making people happy. I think people would be happier if they were out of a cult. I think if people would be happier if their loved ones were out of a cult and more into family, more into bonding that way, more into love, divine love. And, that's what I believe. I've watched that happiness exist for a long time. I don't see the happiness, for instance, in my ex-wife's cult. What she's in is I watch the fake happiness. They all, it's just like any of these. If you watch the cult documentaries, I'm addicted to them.
I sure
And
have.
it's just every single one of them. Oh, glory! Oh, here we are. We're singing in harmony and everything else. And you've got a Jim Jones where they go drink the Kool-Aid and they all die together. That's the level that it can go. It's called Drink the Kool-Aid because of what happened with Jim Jones and Guyana in the 70s, and he got people to literally kill themselves. That's the power that they have. I think one thing in common that cult leaders have is they become God. And now there's a documentary, Mother God, on HBO. I'm watching that as well. There's a leader with a God complex. It's such an odd term to say God complex. It sounds like they're insecure about it, but because I've got a complex. Well, they believe that they are God, and people believe that they are God, or some form of that. All their beliefs put in them. Whatever they say, they start to follow it, and then it becomes a brainwashing. I heard yesterday someone said something about, well, I'm happy to have had my brain cleansed, and I think that's what they rely on. If you've people statements like that, I'm happy to have my brain, because they believe that they're cleansing their brain from toxins like people that they're dealing with, and they leave those people to go into this cleansing that they really believe it is a cleansing. Tell me your experience with that as well. I mean, tell us your experiences with cults. Give us some idea of where you come from and what happened to you.
So the origin story, and my first novel was really centered around this experience. I grew up in the Theosophical Society, and for many years, I met with adults that, we'd sit in the pastor and they'd say, yeah, I talked to a pixie or a dwarf today, and he told me X, Y, and Z, which I thought was pretty cool as a kid, right? But as I grew up, I realized, number one, the Theosophical Society embraced all religions, all beliefs, and it was non-judgmental. But that being said, and I'm the kind of guy, Craig, and this might be TMI, but I am not one that cannot be productive in everything that I do, including those necessary things we do in the necessary room, right? So one day I'll never forget this. I had to go to the necessary room, and I saw in my brother-in-law's bookshelf a book on cults. So I took that with me to the necessary room. And when I opened up the page, the very first cult that they identified as the world's largest cult was what I grew up in. And I was shocked by this, right? It inspired the Nazi culture, the one race theory that Adolf Hitler had was inspired by Madame Blavatsky in the Theosophical Society. Imagine my shock in the necessary room reading this, right? But I think we have to step back and say to ourselves, first of all, what are we gaining from this experience? And secondarily, are there things that are being exploited in us in that experience? And if we trace this back to its origins, and you've been sharing your soul, and I so respect that. Right? So as you saw the early signs of this encroaching reach of a cult into your family, how did it start?
For me, it started with. We're going to get back to you, by the way, but because people have heard my story, but it started. Believe it or not, I was talking about it today where this woman broke. I call her broke. Brought us an insurance, multi-level marketing insurance thing. And I actually introduced her to my wife at the time, we bought an insurance policy. But it's always more than that with multi-level marketing, or people call it pyramid scheme, whatever it was. And since I've been in them, I refuse to call it a pyramid scheme too, because I don't want to diminish the success that some people have had. It's not about that. It's about certain people that are in that don't have monitors, that, they don't have to have qualifications. There's no education. There's no credibility. There's no credentials. All of that does not exist in multi-level marketing. That's the problem with it. There's no one checking you out. They're not vetting you. They don't really know how much money you're making. I remember when I was in this, I was in a thing actually with my wife, is called Zri, and I loved the product. And I used to go to these meetings. I'm going, do you people realize how great this product is? Was it liquid nutritional? I feel fantastic. They go, no, it's not about the product. They were in the motor oil business like a few weeks before. I mean, it doesn't matter when the people are in multi-level marketing, they'll just go wander, on and on to the next one. So whatever, I'm going, hey, wait a minute, it's the product. No, it's not. It's about getting people under you who work for you, and then under that and under the downline is what they call it. So she had this with this insurance thing, and then she skipped town. I remember saying to my wife at the time, how are you okay with that? So suddenly we just have this new representative, and you're just okay with this. That was the first little sign that she was okay with this very powerful woman. Anything that she did that was sketchy. And then she brought us the Year to Millionaire, and that was with this other sketchy woman named Raven. And Raven took people at $10,000 a piece. They put them in a mansion. There was no mansion, by the way. And but they were going to film it for a reality series. That sounded a little appealing to me, but that's what brought us into that. Was like, she was the producer of it, and her husband directed it. And that was a big scam. That's $80,000 later. And then she got out of that finally. We used to call it Boo Group. Anyway, there's a whole scenario here where she just refused to believe that this woman, who's a very powerful, she's very passionate about whatever she does, but it's something different every day. It's mommy minutes. So now I'm the expert mother, and you're going to listen to me, and I'm this expert mother. And they had mommy minutes together, and they're taking photos. I still have the photo on my phone. I mean, so she just went with it like she fell in love with her. Instead of falling in love further with her family and her husband, of which you're committed to, the commitment went over to this woman, broke. And that's what happens with a cult, is they give their life over, they empower them, they deify them to dictate how they feel, what they do. And the person, what she did was she praised my ex-wife, the wife at the time. She just praises her, and that's how she keeps her. She keeps her under her spell in that way. And now they're into a whole other thing. They're into sadomasochism and bondage, and bragging about it. And we have small children. We have children that are someday going to be. It should be the last straw. I just don't know what to do anymore, because the more they say what you resist persists. So it seems to persist even more. But I'm still going to stand in solution. I'm still going to stand in courage and get tips from other people. One of the reasons I have guests on like you is like, let's hear your experience with the cult, getting in, getting out, observations. Fill us in on some of the inside of this, the workings of this. It is fascinating. It's unfortunate that it's fascinating that I have to take part in it, but it's nicer to see it from the outside when you watch these documentaries. But so tell me your experience.
So first of all, let's celebrate the fact that you are standing strong. Let's celebrate the fact that you've stamped your place in the ground and you've said, this is what I want to accomplish. This is how I want to educate people. Because not everybody is brave enough to take those steps, Greg. And I so value that you're doing that. Let's step back a few steps. So
most people, by the way, want to quit. I mean, they'll probably quit the podcast. They're out of the journey. Most people, I'm serious. I mean, I find this in life. I'm one of the few people that's resilient and stands strong no matter what. And I told my ex-wife recently, I said, you're an abuser, maybe worse than I had when the guy that kidnapped me, a serial pedophile. It could be worse because it's maniacal. And it's like It's evil, it's cruel, it's mean-spirited. The cutting off and obviously the violence and all of that, but it's worse. The emotional violence is worse. The fact that can't even have a discussion. All of that just put her power into this other woman, and they have this relationship now and lied about it, and just pathological lying that I've never even seen before. And that's abusive. People think that you need to be some guy that beats a woman that be abusive. Now, emotional abuse that's out there, the eviscerating of men, the emasculation of men, it's really, really deeper than this. So that's why this exploration has to do with that as well. It's like, what's our society doing? And what are we doing about these things, these new paradigms that are being developed? So I'm here to talk about it. Let's have a conversation about it. It's other than her, she runs from every conversation. So let's us have a conversation.
Yeah, and let's break this down to its irreducible minimums. And we start with what the FBI has termed as the sock puppet persona. And I think, maybe Craig, you've heard that term, but maybe listeners haven't. It is that persona that is created online that says, I'm successful, I'm living the life that you want, I'm what you dream to be. And imagine, whether you're weak, whether you're broken, whether you're vulnerable, and I'll share this with you and your audience. I was situationally vulnerable. I was in a head-on car collision a couple of years ago, and I suffered a traumatic brain injury. And over the course of my rehabilitation, all the money that I spent and all the time that I spent, there was a hole to dig out, right? So from a financial perspective, which creates vulnerability, from a spiritual perspective, from a personal relationship perspective, all these things are things that these sock puppet personas look for. But first they have to present themselves to the world in a way that says, wow, this is an intriguing person. I can't believe they reached out to me, right? So it happens in the world of scams very randomly. You'll get a message on WhatsApp or social media network, whatever it may be, dating site, if you're on those kind of sites. And it's a beautiful person, usually Southeast Asian, to be very honest, and married to a Chinese woman. So, I want to ask permission to explain it in that way, but that's the truth. And they have Gucci bags, and they're traveling to San Francisco and, Maui and all the places we want to go to. So when you get this message from them, you may look them up online and you may see all this proof of success, right?
Yes.
That is social engineering. That is social proof. That is
absolutely. When they do those modeling shots with, food porn and, sightseeing porn, it's all allure. And they have a vanity light. I actually think that some of them, I get a lot of the, I hate to say Asian as well, but look, that's a fact. A lot of times people get upset and go, oh, that's racist or whatever it is. Well, if it's a fact that that's how many that I've received, it's 90% are Asian, and they'll say they're Mandarin or whatever it is. I actually, tell me if this is true. I actually think that some of the photos, they're counting on your racism, that they're not even the same person.
100%.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, they use stock photos or whatever it is, and I've had it actually happen. Russian women as well. I've had the same sort of thing where it's bait. It's clickbait. It's thirst trap. All of those things. So they're appealing to our vulnerability as a man, especially if you're womanless, and that's what they do. They lure you in that way. They entice you, and then Lotus is doing the same thing. And I know that it's a lie because I see how much she makes and I have to pay support. So if she's making that kind of money, then start paying me. That would be wonderful. I would love that if this was reversed. And now Broke is bragging that she got a house in Mexico. How do we know that that's true? I have no idea. How did we know that she didn't inherit or her boyfriend has money? We don't know any of this because they're not going to tell you the truth. It's a facade like a Western town. Look at this Western town. Look at this is Gunsmoke. Oh, incredible. But behind it is literally, it's a shell. There's nothing behind it. And it's amazing to me how we believe it, though. And we can believe by movies show that. Those are just shells. Those are not real buildings. That's
So
what they can do.
I really want to draw a defining line for your audience and help your audience understand that there is no difference between scams, which cost Americans in the billions in
Mm-hmm.
2024 alone, which are just exponentially growing. There's no difference between how scams approach you, how cyber threats approach you, how romance scams, pig butchering scams, which we'll talk about. There is absolutely no difference between that and how cults approach you.
That's 100%. Tinder Swindler was another movie, a documentary, where you're sitting there going, you feel bad for this woman, just bought the whole thing. Or the other one where she bought that he was a doctor. How about people that buy into the guys who have a number of wives? You go into denial. That's a message I want to get across to people, is when you go into denial, be okay. Have your ego be okay with, yeah, it's happening to you. Yeah, you made this choice. It's so hard for me to go, oh my God, there's no way that the person I married and looked into her eyes and Maui and all that, there's no way that she could be this. That's my ego. Why can't it? Why can't I be Tinder swindlered? It's like,
Imagine, I referenced CY and CY's dad, who was terminally ill. Imagine CY looking in the eyes of his dad, who's in the hospital bed, and saying, Dad, I think I found something. I think I found a way to pay your hospital bills. I think I found a way to bring you home. I'm so inspired. I'm so happy. It's that same cell that we experience face to face with a loved one, with someone we care about, that is under the influence. And yeah, Craig, it begins with that sock puppet persona, as the FBI defines it. And once you engage with that person, right, the next goal is to learn things about you. In the case of CY, isn't it valuable for a cybersecurity scammer to learn that CY has a father who's terminally ill, that the medical expenses are piling up? What does that equate to? That equates to vulnerability. Same as, I'm not fulfilled in my relationship. I don't have friends. I don't love the life that I lead. I don't feel spiritually fulfilled. Fill in the blanks of all the things that we as human beings naturally experience in our journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of the sock puppet to relationship transition is to find those little thread points and to start to weave a story around those thread points. Because guess what? As we get deeper into this scam, into this call, those are the things that are exploited.
Yes, they are. That's funny. As you're speaking, I'm thinking about where my ex-wife, at the time wife, was when this woman came along. And this is something I have an understanding and compassion for, just like you would have compassion for the person that was rooked with this sick father, right? Well, in this case, the sickness was not the sickness, but the vulnerability was, okay, I'm going to go for women, middle-aged, with children, with a husband who's successful. Let me give her her identity, because she's going to be struggling for her identity. She's now weakened by postpartum. She's weakened by society. What's her place in society? Is it as a mother? Is it as a wife? Let me give her an identity. I'm saying this out loud, again, to help people to watch out for that. If you are, this podcast is there to be a solution for, if you're in a cult, if you want to get someone out of a cult, if you want to identify what a cult is, if you don't want to be in one yourself or be scammed, that's who this is for. So that's who she preyed upon. And by the way, Broke went after another guy, came to me, he says, I lost my wife to this woman. Same thing. Suddenly she's showing up these meetings and meetings and meetings. And then how many meetings happen becomes the brainwashing. And there's no one ever that admits I was brainwashed. No one. Until they come to the day that they can go, okay, I am now going to admit this, which is really rare that people admit they're wrong. So much the pride is another vulnerability
You know
that
what,
they prey
Craig?
upon.
I'm not going to swear, but I wish I could, because what I want to say is this. If I meet people that help me refine the view I have of myself, then they're creating value in my life.
It's
If I
true.
meet people that are trying to redefine me in the way that they want to, then they're predators, most likely.
Wow, what a wonderful way to express that. Thank you. That's fantastic. That was so eloquent and so well put. And I had not heard it that way, and it really hit me. That's exactly right. Can you repeat that in maybe not the exact words, but I really want people to hear what you just said. But something to the effect of what you said, directly what you said, that's important that we walk away with this. So go ahead.
So let me walk you through that evolution, right? So let's go back to the story of CY. CY met quote unquote Jessica, and Jessica was beautiful. She had a sock puppet account that had her traveling the world, all those trappings that would say to yourself, you know, this is someone I want to engage with. And we as human beings, you know, we see those kind of photos and we're like, oh my gosh, this person called me out. How cool is this, right? I feel unique. I feel special. We all want to feel those feelings, and CY definitely did. And what I want to say to you on the other side of this equation is that Jessica was not, as you probably figured, Jessica. Um, the UN estimates that there are over 120,000 human trafficking victims in the country of Myanmar alone who are this Jessica persona.
Oh my God.
They are taken to the country, and there's some exposés on how this all works. They're taken to the country under armed guard. They're given playbooks, they're given managers, they're given quotas, they're beaten, they're electrocuted, they're in prison, and sometimes they're killed if they don't hit those quotas. And their quotas are exploiting you as a person. It is no different in a cult environment. So imagine this whole playbook that says, first, I want to build a relationship. Once I do, I want to understand the vulnerabilities I can exploit later. I want to relate to them. I want to give them the hope of something different. And that's the next evolution in the call, right? So who you are today is transcendent to who you can become in the future. And if I can sell you on the vision of transcendently who you can become, then I've got you bought in. Then you're willing to make some sacrifices along the way to be that person that we both envision and have agreed that you can become. And that's where the call has its power. That's where the scammers have their power. When they take you off your game to become that person they sell you you can become, you're willing to make those sacrifices that you wouldn't individually. So I want to know, who can I be and how can you help me be that person versus how are you telling me I should be and where are you forcing me to move towards in terms of that evolution? And that is a defining point in cults and in scams.
I can plus that by saying, I coach myself and I mentor and I have for years. The difference is, I believe, I'm going to share my experience on how I got there, the truth of how I got there, the truth of what has happened, the truth of how much success is there. There's actual tangible numbers. There's fans that I've had for the years. So obviously I've been successful in that way. So I can let people know this is how I did it. This is how I succeeded in a number of areas. And I've always said that I'm not going to coach you on something I don't know about. If there's an answer, I remember coaching a guy who was a cross-dresser. And it came to that. He had to talk to me about it. And I said to him, I have no experience in that except my mom dressed me as a girl for Halloween every year. That's all I have. I didn't know what else to tell him. So I'm not going to say, here's what you need to do. And I've been noticing this a lot in the coaching world. How many people are talking in these videos and they're literally just what my kids call it a yap sesh, yap session. So they call it a yap sesh. They're just talking about platitudes and ideas and concepts on here's what you need to do. I want to hear, here's what I did to reach Shangri-La. here's my journey to Shangri-La. Here's what, and I'll take you with me, and I'm going to show you where certain potholes are and certain difficulties are. But I can't respect these. And now I'm starting to notice it. I never noticed it before. And it's a lure because they look good. They sound good. They sound like they have everything together. So there's the warning out there. You just expressed the difference. I think it's so well put.
Yeah, so
Hear it.
here's the evolution, Craig. And, I'm speaking to the choir because you've experienced, right? So that sock puppet creates credibility, and then building relationships, establishing those vulnerable points in conversation, building trust together. Then comes the ask. And it's usually an incremental ask, right? It's not, hey, give up your life today, but instead, take this step with me. And guess what comes after that? It is love bombing. It is, we're going to celebrate this moment with you, and you are so welcome in this community. And, we embrace you and we understand you, and all these things that support that next decision, because everything hinges on that next decision, whether it be scams, whether it be cults, to get you in that place as a person where you're like, I finally feel welcome. I finally feel like I can achieve my goals financially, physically, whatever that may be. I think I found a home. Yeah, but there were some steps after that.
And they jump in those gaps. They find those gaps and they jump right in them, and they fill those holes for you in a very conniving but intelligent way. They're so good at what they do. And I just this morning, I was just taken aback by, I walked outside and there she was driving away, my ex-wife. And I'm going, oh, okay, there it is. She dropped something off on the stoop. And I just thought to myself, what a world that they live in where they have to have this conniving, secretive, deceptive life where you have to drop something off at the man you once were married to, the man you made love to have two beautiful children, the man you raised children with, even stepchildren. And that it's reduced to that where you have to hide for even a hello. How sad is that? You can't even say hello because you can't face. There's such hatred and such hatred because I think it's because, I can't say what it's because of. I think it's because of realizing the truth that's really there. I think there's a deep down knowing and awareness of how far, but now it's too late. So I can't face that. I can't, I've tried to, hey, let's have game night. Let's show the kids how mature we can be. Let's have a discussion. No. And I watched it this morning, but I just thought to myself, wow, it's like a thief in the night. And you go into denial. You go, this person can't be that. Well, who's to say they can't? Anybody. I forgot to add the other vulnerability, menopause, something you and I will probably never understand, even though the word men is in it. Putting men on pause. I don't think we could possibly understand the hormonal changes. But where's the support group that says, hang in there, sister? Don't leave, sister. Don't leave, and don't have reasons to abandon your family and all that. That's your hormones talking. Some sort of support group. We need support groups for all of this. That's what I believe. Support groups, 12-step groups that don't have a leader, don't have money that's exchanged. Whatever it is, find these groups. That needs to become the narrative as opposed to, oh, here's another coach and another coach and another coach and another coach. None of them, very few of them with credentials or life experience that they could share with you that has led to something that is Shangri-La to them. They're on their way, maybe on their way. Do I want someone on their way? If you're coached, let's say you're playing basketball. I know that Michael Jordan went to Tim Grover. Tim Grover he paid him off so he couldn't even coach anyone else. That's the edge that he wanted because the guy knows what he's doing. And that's who you go to. But when you're vulnerable, I totally get it. Charles Manson, I've read up on Charles Manson. Charles Manson did what my father ended up doing. My father's was a cult leader himself.
Wow.
And you know what they do? they fill in the gap on the father issues, almost like a genius. They seem like a genius. Like, you have father issues, don't you? It's like a Jedi trick. You have father issues, don't you? So, and they go, yes, I do. And there they got him, because it looks like they're geniuses that they chose. You have, or you have mother issues or whatever it is. They find that gap and they seize it. It's amazing to watch, but also the saddest thing in the world to watch somebody that just gives up themselves and their own power and empowers someone else.
Yeah.
So tell me about your experience of, I believe you were telling me when we spoke briefly about Hemet. Am I right about that? Am I calling correctly Hemet or somewhere?
Yeah, you
And you
are.
have some experience in that town?
I don't want to be specific about the organization because I don't want to open up to a lawsuit. But what I will say is in Hemet, California, there is a facility that has about 800 folks that live there full time. And if you go online, you might be able to figure out who that is. Early in my sales career, I was dropped off in front of the front gate. I was met by a guard with an AR-15 who walked me back to meet the chef. And over the course of 3+ years, I did business in that facility, later to learn that the founder of that said organization had been living there hiding from the IRS, and that's why the armed guards were there.
Mm-hmm.
And, I got a chance to really understand what they embraced, what they thought about, what was important to them. And I think, let's go back to your now ex-wife's experience. Let's go back to CY's experience. Because what happens in both of these occurrences is the separation from who we are today, who we care about, and who they want you to be in the future. And there is an absolute goal. Once they've established rapport, once they've identified your weaknesses, it's important to separate you from those friends that might encourage you not to do the things that you're doing. Those friends that might warn you, hey, you're stepping into something dangerous. In the case of CY that I mentioned, there is a proof element in this cybersecurity scam. It's called Pig Butcher. And what they've done is they've created fictitious cryptocurrency sites. And they invite you to these sites and you invest a little bit of money, maybe it's $100, and you make $1,000. And then you invest $200 and you make $5,000. None of it's real. It is a website that they're maintaining, these Southeast Asian gangs that have these, and this is true, look it up. CNN has an expose. These sites give you the proof of what you're looking for in life. No different than cults, right? Come to our meeting, join our community, and you can see these people are so happy, they're so fulfilled and everything else. But you have to be prepared to make sacrifices. You have to give up your prior life to find your new life, which means you have to give up your friends, your family, your husband, your kids, all those other things. If they don't agree with you, if they don't align with what this is, you have to be willing to step away from them in pursuit of that journey you've identified with me. And it's no different in the Hemet location, which will remain unidentified.
Mm-hmm.
800 people living there had given up their entire lives to be a part of this facility, to be a part of this community. They had given all their money, they'd given all their time, they'd left their lives behind with the promise of something more. And you know what, Craig? Maybe some of them found it. Maybe they did, right?
Yeah, I happen to know them. I happen to know a number of the people you're talking about, and it's right. It's some people do, and everything could be considered a cult when you think about it. Every religion, I mean, anything where there's a leader can be considered a cult. An aerobics class. Do they have aerobics anymore? Spin class. You could have a spin class, and that leader has you believing if you spin 20 times a week, you're going to have the body that I have. Right? And
Yeah.
people just show up and it's good for them, and they're trained that this is great for my body and so on. And it's great for a number of people. A lot of these things, they're great for. As a matter of fact, I don't know that my ex-wife isn't having the time of her life, that it's not fantastic. It could be exactly what she covets. It could be exactly what she wants and always did want. Maybe she did want this pain pleasure with sex, which she never mentioned to me, but maybe that was one of the reasons. I don't know. I mean, I think it's a new thing. You never know what she's been hiding. Maybe she was looking for a woman guide. Maybe she, you know what I mean? We don't know. We don't know. I know that it's sad, but maybe it's not sad. Maybe in the long run, I see these people that you're talking about, and some of them are friends, and I don't see them as being manipulated. It could be my denial. I watched it, and they're just like, it's just like showing up to another church and whatever's in front of them, you know, and obviously that's worked for people throughout history, or a synagogue or mosque or whatever it is. It works until people start to get hurt. I think that's what the difference is people, you'll take anyone down because you have no conscience. Your conscience has been hijacked. Lotus's conscience has been hijacked. There is no talk about it. There's nothing except for her way. And it doesn't matter who's hurt. It doesn't matter what's destroyed. Even finances. She's completely annihilated the finances with no conscience whatsoever. No apology, no regret, no fixing, no amends, nothing. And that's part of what happens when people go into a cult. They're in denial of the people they hurt.
And again, I am so sorry that you've had to experience that, and the personal consequences involved in you going through that experience, and not just you, but your kids. And I say to myself, look, anytime someone asks me to sacrifice something of me in exchange for a promise, should raise a question. And let's take it to its logical conclusion. You mentioned Jim Jones, and I think that that's one extreme. In my novel, I researched the Celestial Temple. And people joined the Celestial Temple with the promise of better lives and more financial success and all the resources and the brain power that this organization brought. Craig, they ended up in suicide circles.
Yeah.
5 people, feet pointing inward, fire burning, shots fired into their head. And this was, thousands of people in a mass suicide, because the evolution of this cult is when it doesn't deliver on its promises, it then points inward to society. It points inward to the blame. Why we're not succeeding. It's not our fault. It's everything else here. And we have to extricate ourselves from this community. It's a dangerous world we work in when people are drawn into this cult. So the question becomes, and from your experience, what do we do to help those people that have loved ones they care about that may be stepping in that direction? How do we provide them resources? What questions do we ask to help them critically think through the steps they're taking and where they may be leading their lives into?
Yeah, I'll put out to anybody, write me a note at Craig@CraigShoemaker.com if you want to discuss it, if you want to form groups, there's power in numbers, there's safety in numbers. We just don't know how far they can go, and we see those examples, and that can't happen to me. You're paranoid if you think that. That's what I'm getting, or just drop it. I'm getting so much of that, and people that, they're just they just stay in the sadness, or they say, "Oh, no, don't feel sorry for me. This is my evolution. This is my, the expression, cross to bear," or whatever it is. But it's okay that it is. That's the thing, is I'm not dying. I'm not quitting. It's just not who I am. I'm resilient. I'm going to get up and I'm going to thrive no matter what. No matter what your circumstance, I say this to the audience, no matter what your circumstance is, why would you quit? Now, Lotus quit every single thing that she was ever involved with. So there was that indication. I would watch her quit. And I was so proud of her, the things that she did do. She was a a translator. She was a union electrician. I was so proud. I did a pilot once, and she was my girlfriend. Oh, the boss's girlfriend wants to be an electrician. And by the end of it, they're going, "You're in the union? How'd you get there?" She shows up in a tool belt. I was so proud of her, and all the things that she would do. And then something would happen, and just gone and on to the next one. But it's the integrity that is so missing with people, that integrity is not at the top of the list. And I think it needs to be. Values, integrity, morals. And what they do is they manipulate what even your moral standards are. They'll say, "What, those are morals for other people." I remember that was a big conversation I had with the guy that kidnapped me. I said, "What about morals?" I was a little 13-year-old boy. I was trying to get out of this ghetto hotel. And I remember him laying into me. He goes, I'm going to curse here. "Fuck morals. Those are from somebody else. But does that mean it's you and me? We're best friends, aren't we? This is what best friends do." See, that convincing this vulnerable boy that these are the morals that you should go by. These are the values. This person is acting like a father figure. Boy Scout leaders, Jerry Sandusky, the football coach. These are people that they're predators, but so are these cult leaders. It's all very similar, and it's all kind of blended. It's why I'm doing this podcast. Is where are the commonalities with things like you were talking about with the deathbed, or the ripoff, the crypto, whatever it is, luring you into some scam, the Tinder swindler. Is that a cult? Yes. It's all related because they're doing the same thing. It's the same process. It's the same process to bring you in. They bring you in because you're lacking something. You're lacking something in your life, and that's how they pull you into their lair. That's what this guy did to me. That's what this woman did to my ex-wife. I'm going to pull you in and dominate you and control your mind and manipulate your mind. And any questions that are asked, let's attack the person who's asking those questions. I was threatened by the cult leader's boyfriend. With my vulnerability, I'm going to take your kids away. Now, practically, of course, can't do that. Far from it. I'm a great father. But there you had it. They knew how to get to me, my kids. And she, Lotus, had them do this and thinks nothing of it. That's how programmed you can be. With your values are gone, your morals are gone. Here's the father of your children who you're saying, texting on one hand, texting what an incredible father and dedicated father, and then you're having these people attack at the same time. That's how they can be that schizophrenic. And then there's the mental illness that enters into it. I'm sure you're familiar with that as well.
I am, Craig. And, the advice I would have for our audience, and I so respect those that stuck with us, because this has been meaningful and transformational. Number one, understand your personal limitations and do your research, because what happens is there is a confirmation bias bubble that we get thrown into.
Yep.
When we see things, when we hear things that align with who we believe we are, what we believe we understand, we're drawn towards those things to the exclusion of other things that may be beneficial to us. Those can be punitive. And then there is, and I'm just going to be frank, the Dunning-Kruger effect, which I'm sure you're familiar with, right? That says when you don't know a topic, but you believe in your intelligence enough that instead of being educated on the topic, you're going to trust your own opinion confidently and move forward. What I say to your audience is, do your research. Understand what are the hooks in cults? What are the hooks in scams? How do they operate? What are the commonalities within their approaches? And you know what? We meet people every day in our lives that can be blessings to us, and we don't want to exclude those folks, right? But we want to separate the predators from the beneficial folks in our lives. And we can't do that unless we understand the difference between those two things. So setting aside the confirmation bias that, and I'm guilty of it too, Dunning-Kruger, right? I think I know what I don't know until I realize I didn't know it. Educate yourself on what it looks like to be introduced to a call. What are the behaviors? What are the behaviors of a scam? Know what those signs are and be brave enough to ask yourself that question when you think you're experiencing them. Could this be the case? And what resources? And I think, Craig, you're an excellent one to reach out to should that occur.
Yeah. And the other thing that I would add to that is a trust of self, that we are our own news source. We are our own research. When you're talking about the deepening of your own healing, the deepening of your grand love, the deepening of true self, authentic self, deepen that. And then you're out of fear, because fear is the motivating factor for most of these moves that we make. I'm so happy, if anything I've happened in my life, it's being courageous enough to address my fears and courageous enough to go, oh, I don't need to go to a news source for that, because they're just choosing the news that they want me to have, because they're going to manipulate me. By the way, mass media is a cult, probably the worst one. Now social media is becoming a cult. So I get to make my own decisions that are based in love, tolerance, compassion, empathy, understanding, divineness, divine flow, the ethereal sense of who I am. I get to tap into that. That's the tapped in resource. There it is. So people, you're not an expert, and you're not, and I'm going to say this. No one is. No one is an expert at anything. It's all who you deify and dictate who should be the expert. Trust science. Which scientists are you trusting? You trusted Joseph Mengele in Nazi Germany. That was the scientist, the doctor, the go-to doctor. And how'd that turn out? That's what happens when we just mindlessly go out of our mindfulness and make sure that we put this label on someone, and there's my answer. I did my research. No, you didn't. I challenge anyone to say, when they start pontificating on, some political belief that they have, whatever, no, you've been indoctrinated. It's your choice. You chose this source because you just said it earlier, Philip. It's confirmation bias. We're walking into these things with confirmation bias. People who are supporting my ex-wife, it's confirmed. Their bias is confirmed. She's already put it out there. I'm a hippie. I'm good. I'm kind. I'm a meditator. I'm a breathwork person. I'm a tapper. Yeah. Whoa, wow. She's got to have it together. Look how pretty she is. And look at these open-minded and soulful videos and things like that. It's confirmation bias, because we walk in going, no, the bad guy looks like that guy. Bad guy can't look like this. There's no way. That's how they ended up with Mother Love and that documentary, Mother Love. That's how Tinder Swindler happened. This guy looked a certain way, and he gave her what she needed, thought she needed, without looking deep inside. That's what I would say to anyone, is deepen your spiritual practice. Deepen the spirit that's within you, this potency that exists inside of you. It has your answers. We're geniuses. Don't you agree with that, Philip? We're all geniuses.
I do. And, I'm chuckling because I have written 5 books, and it's been an honor in my life to be a published author. It's always been a journey I wanted to explore. My third book, my first, second, and third book, I should say, were all nonfiction. And I gotta say, I feel like I was a pretty good nonfiction writer. Then I decided I wanted to try exploring fictional work. And I hired an editor, and thankfully I did. And I said to him, listen, I'm going to write a bestseller in 3 months. And he's like, yeah, of course you are. Let's see how that goes, right? It took me 4 years before I got my first compliment, before I had explored myself as a writer in the ways that were meaningful to the audience, that were engaging to the audience, with the help, with the guidance, with the mentorship of this editor. Dan Edelman, and I'll be forever grateful to him that, I had a book that hit #3 on Amazon.
Mm.
Phenomenal. I'm really honored that it would never have friggin' happened had I been left to my own. And what I want to say is that don't be like me. Don't be boastful of your current capabilities. Don't assume that you can be a bestseller in 3 months. Certainly ask the question, can I? And if you hear something from an educated source like Craig, like other resources we can introduce to you, that suggests to you maybe you should rethink this, my gosh, honor that, because we're all in a journey together. Where we end up, how we live our life, how we rest ourselves in peace at the end of it all, what we look back on with pride, reflects on the decisions we make. And sometimes we're not fully equipped to make those decisions, and we need resources. And the reason I joined this podcast is Craig, I think, is an excellent one based on his experience. So I hope all of you listening, if you hear any signs that say to you, maybe I should talk to Craig, because hope you
let's, let's not hope too much. My hours are limited. I'm still
do.
raising kids. They're in the other room right now. As a matter of fact, I had to step in here and have this wonderful conversation with you. I would just say that also tapping into our creativity, which is your creator, which is magnificent and powerful, is so much more powerful than anything you could go to outside of yourself. It's limitless. The potency is limitless. So I encourage anyone to really untap that and let it flow. It's just tamped down by all this research you're doing outside of yourself, that all that's going to do is confirm some biases. All that's going to do is put you in fear, because the research they're doing, a lot of it has to do with they're protecting their self-interest. So they're going to make sure you're afraid to even examine something. Examine inside of yourself. Do an expedition and unearth that stuff that's in there, that's built up in there. And there is such freedom. And that's the thing, is the cult leaders act like you're not free to begin with. Come on, she would say, come on, mamas, get your sovereign freedom. This is what she would say. She was as free as a bird. Get out of your golden cage. She was no golden cage. There's no cage. It's an illusion. They say things, buzzwords, and things that just have people go, oh, wait a minute, that sounds so good. And my husband or my wife or whatever, my significant others, my family, they don't understand me. They're not saying these words to me. Dig deeper. Get in there. Have the courage to change the things you can. That's the serenity prayer and the wisdom to know the difference. I believe that you and I are doing something that can make a difference. It really has a result of shifts and changes and people breaking out of these prisons that they're in. That's the irony. She says of freedom. She's in a prison now. She's in a prison of hate and cruelty and darkness and demonic. I think it's even demonic. I hate to use the word. People that's other thing. People go, don't use that word. No, I'm going to use it. It's demonic. That's what it feels like. When you look into the eyes of someone who was so loving and you just see vacuous, darkness with no pupils. It can shut off and disassociate like that. That's programming. And I do believe in people. I've already done interventions in my life. Get in there. Say, here's what you could have. We love you. I say that to anyone who's in a cult. We love you. Just tell them that. And I do believe that's the pathway out.
Amen, brother. And I so value, I so appreciate, I so respect the work that you're doing. I, understand how difficult this journey has been for you, and to open up yourself to others in an effort to help them is really the greatest gift you can give others. So, man, thank you for what you do, and thank
You're
you.
welcome. It's the motivation. It's what keeps me going. I mean, and the other motivation that's selfish is to have the mother of these children, extraordinary children. I mean, they're just so fun and funny and filled with they're filled with something, though, that she took away. Their inspiration has been taken away. I can't convince them to go into sports again. They sleep a lot, and I'm trying to have this other energy be more their energy than the quitting energy and the blaming and the victim and all that kind of stuff. I'm really doing my best to bring that. Matter of fact, got to conclude this because I got to go to them right now. We just did a high-low when they came back, and they said, Craig, you're doing your podcast now. Oh, okay. I'm going to go back to their high-low. Their high-low today was they both didn't like the heat. There was a lot of heat, no air conditioning. And the high was their lunchtime, which I got explained to me, which is interesting, without screens, to have that connection, the divine connection, as opposed to an internet connection, which can always fail. Divine can't. That's my message. Anyway, Philip, where can we find you? Can we find you anywhere? And
Yeah, I have podcasts, I have books on Amazon. That's not as important to me as it is to support your mission, Craig.
thank
So,
you, Philip.
those that want to search me, Philip Maco, you can find me online.
Beautiful.
What I care about is what you're doing, and I really respect the mission, the journey that you're on. And
Thank you.
for me to be a part of it.
I appreciate it. By the way, I just got a text message from, listen to this, on a recovery aspect. One of the enemies, her friend, is now starting to text me, and she's getting our daughters together. When it used to be just, she would only deal with my ex-wife, Lotus. And now, little friendly text message, she's almost here, coming over to my house. The enemy. The illusion of an enemy. Nobody really is.
It is a step forward.
Step forward is exactly right. And all we have is that. Just have steps forward and our presence and our mindfulness. That's what we got. All right. Anyway, hope you all enjoyed this. Spread the word, okay? It's called, well, you know what it's called. My wife joined a cult. Sounds like a horror movie. Anyway, thanks, Philip. Talk to you.